Welcome back, students. Today I'm going to go through a homework assignment with you. This is found on Alex, and it is a quiz review that you will need to complete before you take your quiz over equations of lines. So it's 10 questions long, and the first question is going to ask you about the slope. So it gives me 4 graphs. If I wanted to, I could take ordered pairs off of my graphs normally and try to determine my slope. However, since these graphs are provided for me, I'm just going to read the graph. And the way that you read a graph, just like I read the sentence, for each line, determine whether the slope is positive, negative, 0, or undefined, you read a graph from left to right, just like I read that sentence. So for this first line, going from left and then going to the right, it's going up, which means that this slope is positive. On my next line, when I read it from left to right, it's going down, so this slope is negative. Now the last two are special lines. This one's a vertical line and this one's a horizontal line. Anytime you have a vertical line, it means it goes up and down, but it doesn't go left and right. Remember that in your slope formula, it's your rise over your run. So this rises, it just doesn't run any. So you cannot divide by 0, which is an undefined. And for a horizontal line, you don't go up or down any, which means it's 0 for its rise, but you go left and right. So 0 divided by a number is going to give you 0. On the next question, it also works with slope, but this time, instead of giving us a graph, it gives us the ordered pairs. So we are going to be using our formula, and we're going to label x1, y1 for our first ordered pair, and x2, y2 for our second ordered pair. Our formula is m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So the way that a formula works is we are going to start with the formula, and then we're going to replace in that formula with the values of the variables that we know. So y2 we labeled as negative 4, so I erased what said y2 and I replace it with negative 4. Next I'm going to erase y1, and I'm going to replace it with the number that I labeled as y1, which that number was 5. Then I'm going to erase x2, and I'm going to replace it with what I labeled as x2, which is 8. And then I'm going to erase x1 and replace it with what I labeled as x1, which was 2. And then feel free to pull up Desmos and type all of this into Desmos, but we're going to come up with negative 9 over 6, which is going to reduce down to be negative 3 over 2. My next question takes me into graphing. So in order to be able to graph a line, you have to have a starting point, and then you have to know how to move, which is called your slope. So for this one, the starting point is at negative 3, 3. So from the origin, I move to the left 1, 2, 3, and 3 means I go up 1, 2, 3. So where I land, I plot my first point. Now the slope is telling me how to move. So this negative I can put with a 2, and a negative would mean go down, a positive would mean go up, and then the bottom number is your run. So how far to the left do you go or how far to the right? So we'll always go either up or down, but in the denominator we will always go to the right. So this is telling me I'm going to go down 1, 2, and to the right 1, 2, 3, and I'll plot a point. And then I'll come over here and I'll get my line tool and I'll click on those 2 points that I plotted. And now I have my graph of my line. So the slope was negative, and notice that when I look at my graph overall, my line is going down, which is a good indicator that I did this right. The next question asks me to graph the line, but this time instead of telling me in words, it gives me an equation of the line. So because it gives me the equation of the line, I still need to know a starting point, and I still need to know how to move. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare this to the formula y equals mx plus b. So the number that's in front of x is my m. It tells me how to move. And this is negative 2 over 5. So this is telling me to go down 2 and to the right 5. The number that's in the spot for b is 6. So you have to know that b represents the y-intercept. So because b is the y-intercept, that means that I'm going to plot a point on the y-axis at positive 6, and then the slope is negative 2 over 5, so I'm going to go move down 2 and to the right 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And once you've plotted 2 points, you then are going to connect those 2 points with a line. Once again, my slope was negative, so when I look at this overall, my line's going down, which is a good sign that I did it right. The next problem also wants me to graph the line and to state the slope and the y-intercept. However, I can't just compare this to y equals mx plus b, because right now my equation is negative 8x minus 2y equals negative 4. So what I'm going to need to do first is get this in the form of y equals mx plus b. So I need to get y by itself. Okay, so I need to move this minus 8x. Notice the x term is on the other side. I need to move the 8x term over to the other side. Right now it's negative, so the opposite to move it is going to be plus 8x on both sides. So this is going to leave me with negative 2y. So I still have a negative 2 in front of the y, equals, now when I go to write this, notice x is first, so I'm going to bump the negative 4, and I'm going to put positive 8x first, and then minus 4. So now to get y by itself, it's being multiplied by negative 2, so the opposite of multiply is divide. So I'm going to divide every term by negative 2. And that's going to leave me with y equals, the negative 2's cancel, that's why I just have y equals, 8 divided by negative 2, you can use Desmos if needed, but that's going to give me negative 4, and then I have an x, and then negative 4 divided by negative 2 is going to give me positive 2. So what I'm going to do from here is this tells me that what's in front of x is my slope. So I'd type in over here that my slope is negative 4, and my y-intercept is what's attached at the end. I'm either adding or subtracting. In this case, I'm adding 2, so that's a positive 2. So then to graph this line on the y-axis, I'd plot a point at positive 2, and the slope tells me to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, and then to the right 1. And all you need are 2 points, and then you can connect those points with a line. This next question is pretty much the reverse of the last question. Instead of trying to graph the line, the graph is given, and I need to write an equation of the line. So the equation of the line can either be in point-slope form or slope-intercept form. Now, slope-intercept form is easier if you can get the y-intercept to be a nice whole number. So first thing that we're going to do is look at the y-axis and see where does it cross the y-axis, and it's at negative 1. So since that is a nice integer value, I know that b is equal to negative 1. This is telling me I'm going to use y equals mx plus b. I'm going to use this formula because, again, my y-intercept is a nice whole number. And then I'm using y equals mx plus b because this is a slanted line, and it goes through both axes. So I want to use a formula that has both x and y. So notice in this formula, I need to know what the m is and the b. Over here, I have the b. Now I need to work on getting the slope. So reading this graph from left to right, one thing I know before even beginning counting is that this slope is going to be negative. So how far down do I have to go? Or if I started from here, how far up do I have to go? So these points are at the same level. So I'm going to actually count up. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. And now these 2 points, if I move this up 4, they would be at the same height. So my rise is 4. And then how much do I have to go over? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's my run. How much do I have to go over? And I don't need to worry about positives or negatives because from the very beginning I determined the slope's going to be negative. The only thing I need to do now is reduce this, so I could put that into Desmos if needed, but I know that top is divisible by 4 to give me 1, and the bottom divided by 4 is going to give me 2. All right, so now all I need to do is, in this box right here, is to type in my formula, which is y equals mx plus b, but I'm going to go back and I'm going to erase b, and I'm going to replace it with negative 1, And then I'm going to erase m and replace it with negative 1 over 2. Very similar to the last question, this next one just doesn't give me a line. Instead of it gives me a sentence that describes the line. It says write an equation in slope-intercept form. So I'm going to go ahead and type in y equals mx plus b for the line with a slope of 1/2 and a y-intercept of -7. So you just need to know where the 1/2 goes and where the -7 goes. The slope tells you how to move, so I'm going to delete the m and I'm going to replace it with the 1/2. And then the b is the y-intercept. So since the y-intercept is -7, I'm going to actually get rid of the sign of plus as well, and I'm going to replace it with a negative, so a -7. And that's all I'll have to do for that one. My next problem asks me to write an equation of a line. It gives me a point on the line, but notice it's not the y-intercept. I know it's not the y-intercept because any y-intercept is going to have a 0 for its x-coordinate, and then whatever that number is the y-intercept. That y-coordinate's the y-intercept. And so because I notice that 0 is not my x-coordinate, this is not a y-intercept. It's just a random point that is on the line. So here's a point on the line, here's the slope of the line. So the easiest way for me to write an equation of the line is to use what's called point-slope form. So point-slope form is y minus y1 equals m, and then in parentheses, x minus x1. So here, what we do is we're going to replace our y1 value, we're going to replace our m, and we replace the x1 value. So our slope is labeled as m. Our ordered pair that they give us, we're going to label as x1, y1. And then now what I'm going to do is in my formula, I'm going to erase the m, and I'm going to replace it with the slope that it gave me, which is -5 over 2. And then I'm going to erase the x1, and I'm going to replace it with my x1 value, which was 8. And then I'm going to erase the y1 value and replace it with the y1 value, which is -9. There's only one thing that I need to do before I type this in. If I have y minus negative, okay, notice how it wants a sign, or it wants a number here and then a number here as well, but I don't have a number separating those two signs. Okay, what that means is if I have a double negative, I will not be hungry today, means that I am going to be hungry. So that means double negative in English language is the same thing as in the math language. It means it's going to change to a positive. So y minus -9, I can't type it in that way in Alex, which means I need to change it to a positive. So I change it to y plus 9 equals, now I'll type in my fraction slope, which was -5 over 2. And then in parentheses, I have my x minus 8. This next problem you can see is basically the exact same problem. A line passes through, it gives me an ordered pair. That's not the y-intercept because x isn't 0, and it gives me the slope. The difference between the last problem and this one, however, is it says write an equation in slope-intercept form. So slope-intercept form means when I type in my answer, it's going to have to be y equals mx plus b, where I've replaced the m with the slope and I've replaced the b with the y-intercept. So what I need to do over here is I'm going to start off by putting this in slope-intercept, or in point-slope form. I'm sorry, point-slope, because it gives me just a random point on the line. So I'm going to label this point as x1, y1, and I'm going to label my slope as m. So point-slope form is y minus y1. Remember that these formulas are going to be provided for you. And then m parentheses x minus x1. So I'm going to erase my m, and I'm going to replace it over here with what it tells me m is, which is 5 over 4. And then I'm going to erase x1, and I'm going to replace with what I label as x1, which was 4. And then I erase y1 to replace it with 6. So if it is asked for the equation, if it just asked for an equation of a line, this would work. If it asks for it in point-slope form, this would work. But if it's asking for a slope-intercept form, it means y needs to be by itself. No parentheses and y by itself. So I'm going to get rid of the parentheses first by distributing 5/4. So I'm going to get y minus 6 equals 5/4 times x is 5/4 x. And then if you need to use Desmos, use Desmos. Take 5/4 times -4, and that's going to give us -5. So I got rid of the parentheses. Next, when I compare it to my formula, I need y by itself, and here I'm subtracting 6. So the opposite of a -6 is a +6 on both sides. So these cancel, and I'm left with, sorry about that, y equals, and then 5/4x, and then -5 plus 6 is +1. So here, this is what I'm going to type into my box over here, because this is of the form y equals mx plus b. The slope is 5/4, which I knew from the beginning, but I had to do a little work to get the y-intercept. This last problem says write equations for vertical and horizontal lines passing through the point 8, 0. So if you want to plot your point on a graph, you can. Okay, so 8, 0, you can find where your point is and you can plot it. So for me, 8, 0 would be to the right 8, and then I don't go up or down any. But what's important here is that I know the difference between what a vertical line is and what a horizontal line is. So a vertical line goes straight up and down, and a horizontal line goes straight left to right. So if I were to place a vertical line anywhere on this graph, okay, I'm going to go ahead and draw it through my point because that's what it wants me to do, pass through this point. So if I draw in a vertical line that goes through my point, ask yourself, what axis is that going through? Notice that this is only going through the x-axis, so when I'm going to write my equation of my line, I'm only going to have x equals. Now, where does it cross through? Use the x-coordinate of your ordered pair. So for mine, it would be at x equals 8. And then a vertical line, no, I just did the vertical line, I'm sorry. A horizontal line is straight left to right. So find your point wherever you graphed it, and then draw in a horizontal line that goes through it. All right, now, had I placed it down here, this would have been more clear. Okay. A horizontal line, when you draw it, it goes through, no matter where you place it, it will always go through the y-axis. So that means that for a horizontal line, we will always have y equals, and then where does it cross the y-axis? So look to see where does yours cross the y-axis, or look to see what's your y-coordinate of your ordered pair. And so for mine, this is going to be y equals 0. So vertical lines and horizontal lines, notice that they only have one variable in them because a vertical line is only guaranteed to go through the x-axis, and a horizontal line is only guaranteed to go through the y-axis. So you'll always have x equals a number for a vertical line and y equals a number for a horizontal line. Take a look at what your x-coordinate is. That's your x equals. That's your vertical line equation. Take a look at what your y-coordinate is. Y equals, that is your that's your horizontal line equation. All right, so once you have done all of this work and you've gone through, just make sure that you submit your assignment. And don't forget that the way that Alex works is it will tell you what you got right and what you got wrong. And it will give you a report of it as well. So you can go through and you can see what you missed. And whatever you missed, you can then go quick retake and you can go back and you can redo that problem that you missed or problems that you missed. Mine are just the ones that I didn't actually type into the boxes. All right, I hope that helps. Again, this is to help you with homework number 21, but it's also helping you with what you will see on your quiz.